Let's start with the bad and slowly work our way toward the stuff of nightmares. Number 8. Judicial caning. Many countries still legally whip criminals with a cane. But in places like Singapore, it's taken to another level of calculated cruelty that has drawn international criticism for decades. If you're convicted of violent crimes or vandalism, you can be sentenced to judicial caning. The criminal is bent over, ankles and wrists tightly strapped down so they cannot move even an inch. Before the punishment begins, the cane, usually made of rattan, is soaked in water for several hours. This makes it more flexible, heavier when it strikes, and significantly more painful, almost like a wet rope. The officer who carries out the caning is highly trained. He is taught to deliver each strike with maximum force and perfect precision, aiming for the buttocks to cause the most pain while avoiding permanent damage to vital organs. After every single strike, there is a deliberate, long pause, sometimes up to a minute, just to make sure the criminal feels every burning second of agony before the next powerful blow lands. The pauses are intentional psychological torture, forcing the prisoner to anticipate the next wave of pain, while their body is still reeling from the previous one. The number of strokes depends on the severity of the crime, but it can go as high as 24. Most people leave the trestle bleeding heavily with deep, open wounds that often require medical treatment and can take weeks to heal. The scarring is permanent, both physical and psychological. Many former prisoners say the worst part wasn't just the pain itself, but the humiliation of being publicly whipped in front of other inmates and sometimes even family members who were forced to watch. Some victims of caning have reported long-term trauma, including severe anxiety, depression, and difficulty forming normal relationships years after the punishment. Number 7. The white room. There's a room so psychologically devastating that even the most hardened criminals fear it more than physical pain. It's simply known as the white room. Located deep inside Iran's notorious Evin prison, a facility already infamous for human rights abuses, the punishment begins with the prisoner being dressed entirely in white clothing. They are then thrown into a small, completely soundproof cell where every surface is painted blinding white. The overhead lights never turn off, not even for a second. Outside the cell, guards wear special cushioned shoes, so their footsteps make no sound at all. No voices, no clocks, no natural light. With zero contrast, zero sound, and zero human contact, the prisoner's brain eventually begins to break down. It starts creating its own reality, vivid hallucinations, phantom voices, crawling sensations on the skin, and terrifying visions that feel completely real. Prisoners lose all sense of time. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. Some have been kept in this room for up to 8 months. Those who eventually come out often suffer permanent psychological damage, severe anxiety, depression, paranoia, dissociation, and an inability to function normally in the outside world. Many say they would rather endure physical torture than return to the white room. Human rights organizations have repeatedly condemned this form of sensory deprivation as a form of psychological torture that violates basic human dignity. Number 6. Amputation. In several countries, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and parts of Nigeria, amputation remains a legal form of punishment for theft, a practice rooted in ancient Islamic law but still enforced in the 21st century. In Saudi Arabia, a convicted thief can lose one hand, while armed robbers may lose a hand and the opposite foot. In Iran, judges sometimes show mercy by amputating only the fingers of the right hand. The procedure uses a small guillotine-style machine. The prisoner is blindfolded, handcuffed, and firmly restrained. Their hand is positioned with fingers extended. At the signal, the blade drops with brutal force, severing the fingers cleanly. The wound is then quickly stitched up, and the prisoner is sent back to their cell to walk it off. The psychological impact is devastating. Many former prisoners report lifelong trauma, loss of identity, deep shame, and difficulty finding work or forming relationships after release. The visible disability serves as a permanent public mark of their crime, making social reintegration nearly impossible. Number 5. Chemical and surgical castration. In countries like South Korea, Poland, and Indonesia, individuals convicted of serious sexual offenses against children can be sentenced to chemical castration after completing their prison term. They receive regular injections that drastically reduce testosterone levels and suppress sexual drive. The more severe the crime, the longer the treatment period. Side effects can include depression, weight gain, loss of bone density, and reduced quality of life. But these are rarely considered when sentencing. In the Czech Republic, the practice goes even further. High-risk repeat offenders can be offered permanent surgical castration, although international pressure has made it officially voluntary. In recent years, the procedure is still performed on those who agree under heavy psychological pressure. Critics argue that even voluntary castration in such contexts is coercive. Number 4. An eye for an eye. Iran still practices the ancient principle of kisses, retribution in kind. Victims or their families can legally request equivalent punishment. For the attacker, in recent years, several people who threw acid on others, causing permanent blindness, have themselves been sentenced to have acid dropped into their eyes. The victim is even allowed to administer the punishment personally. They still have sight. The attacker is then returned to prison to serve the rest of their sentence. The procedure is carried out under official supervision, but the psychological horror of waiting for the acid to fall is unimaginable. These cases have sparked intense international debate about whether such punishments constitute cruel and unusual treatment. Number 3. Being thrown from a cliff. One of the rarest and most terrifying punishments still on the books in Iran. The condemned is placed inside a large sack, which is tightly sealed, and then thrown off a cliff. If by some miracle they survive the fall, they are pulled from the sack and immediately hanged instead. This double punishment has been officially sentenced in recent decades for particularly heinous crimes, though reliable confirmation is difficult due to heavy censorship in Iran. Number 2. Creative capital punishment. Beyond standard executions, some countries have developed particularly cruel variations. In Saudi Arabia, beheading with a sword remains legal for murder and drug-related crimes. The prisoner kneels on the ground, arms tied behind their back, head lowered. A trained executioner swings a long sword, with full force, often in front of a gathered crowd. The public nature adds layers of humiliation and deterrence. China has used mobile execution vans that drive to the prisoner and deliver a lethal injection on the spot, allowing executions to be carried out with minimal public visibility. Iran sometimes uses the short drop hanging method, lifting the prisoner just a few inches off the ground so they slowly strangle to death rather than dying instantly from a broken neck. This method is widely criticized as unnecessarily prolonged and painful. Number 1. Stoning to death. Easily the most brutal and inhumane punishment still used in the modern world, stoning. It remains legal in Iran for adultery and has also occurred through mob justice in Nigeria and Somalia. In recent years, the victim is buried up to their chest or waist for men in the ground. A crowd then throws stones until the person is dead. In some cases, if the condemned can miraculously free themselves from the hole after confessing, they may technically be spared. But in practice, escape is almost impossible, especially for women. The public and often televised nature of these executions adds another layer of cruelty and humiliation. Human rights groups have repeatedly called for the complete abolition of stoning, describing it as a form of torture, has no place in the 21st century. These are some of the most barbaric, archaic, and terrifying punishments still carried out or recently practiced in our so-called modern world. Some are officially legal, some are mob justice. All of them reveal how thin the line between justice and pure cruelty can be. In an age of advanced technology, international human rights declarations, and growing global awareness, it's sobering to realize that in many parts of the world, the darkest chapters of human punishment are far from over. The question remains, how long will societies continue to accept such brutality in the name of justice?